Right, here is our little BSA. Been doing a little bit of maintenance on this, and it's one of those simple things that turns into a bit of a nightmare. In essence, I thought the fork core needs changing and just checking really, but I thought, oh, let's just sort of get involved and take the forks out and have a look. Not so easy. The problem on this model, once you get all the paraphernalia off, of which there's a considerable amount, these two bolts under the headlamp are actually the pinch bolts for the bottom clamps. So once you disassemble the top shroud, you disassemble everything and this slides down. You can't take this cowl off without taking the forks out first. So the forks is in essence come out and the cowl slides off the top. Brilliant idea, you might think, except that the forks are pressed in, not pressed but just slid in to the headstock. This is a cover, but under there's a headstock which is similarly the same, and the manual states give them a sharp tap and they'll pop out, which they probably would if you could secure the bottom clamps. But of course I clouted it a couple of times, a piece of wood, following all the necessary sort of guidelines not to damage anything, and all it did was slide effectively the forks up on from the lower clamps, so I couldn't get enough purchase to actually release it. The reason I wanted to take it off was because I found it notchy. So what in essence I had to do, which is a cheat I know, and it was a paraphernalia of a job, was it essentially this wasn't moving, because as I say, this is the headstock, and every time you hit the headstock, hit it from underneath, this was basically sliding up. But that then gave me access to the bearings. So what I did, and following Dave Wallace's, he did a similar job on his C12, I got enough clearance, I lifted it, by the time I tapped it up it had come up probably enough for me to then very carefully pick the bearings out. The grease in there was, well, it wasn't like treacle, it was hardened obviously. So then I picked them all out and very carefully counted them out and counted them in, as they say, and then cleaned this out with some carburetor cleaner, and as I say, just managed to sort of, you know, put a jack under here and clean the top out, then release the jack and clean the bottom out, which all went to plan. Of course the real fiddly bit is getting the bearings back in with grease, and that took me sitting on a stool here for best part of, I think 2 days ago I finished that bit, and that was really a long drawn out patient job. And then packed it with grease, it's got fresh grease in there, and reassembled the whole thing. This shroud slides down obviously, so it's all worried about damaging paint and everything, but say the shroud slides down, this as well, so this slides down. And then once I've put it all back, jacked it up, tapped it back down, affixed the bolt to clamp it all up, reassembled everything, then clamped it, and once it was up in the air, tightened it, loosened it, and got it so it was tight without any play, and hopefully that has sorted that job. Yeah, real ball ache to do it properly. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how you would release those forks, because let's say the headstock under there, that top yoke, sorry, every time you tap that it just slid up through there, so really you were going nowhere. So short of really getting aggressive with a hammer, which I didn't want to do, I felt that was a good bit of maintenance without going full bloody guns on it. Checked everything, put everything back, cleaned everything, tightened everything, etc, etc. So now that one's ready for road test. I've just at the last bit I thought I'll put the battery in, check all the lights working, because obviously you have to take the headlamp and all the wiring out, speedo cable, handlebars off, etc. Actually, I released the handlebars and with a towel I laid it back on the tank, so that was okay. So there I am now, ready for road test. I've just put the battery in, as I say. I've just looked at the battery, it's dry as a bone. It's been on an Optimate for the 4, 5, 10, I don't know how many years I've had that battery. And it's always shown good charge. It's never had a real cooking, but obviously I'm not going to put it back in. I'll put some distilled water in it and see if it survives. I say it's been charging, and it's been sat on the Optimate, Accumate I think this one is, a 6-volt Optimate thing, and it's never shown any signs of having a dead battery, but I'm not going to put it back in without topping it up. Putting the battery in is a bit of a fiddle on those, so that's something I'm going to do before I put the battery in, because it's just, as I say, it's a ball ache to get the battery in and out. Similarly, the Honda had a very similar process. In actual fact, it was somewhat easier, as you can see. So that had a rattle, which is probably just a rattle that is due to a real dodgy bit of road, but I came back and thought, oh, what's that noise? So again, that's all been taken apart. It was actually a much easier job. Forks out, drained the forks, turned them upside down, filled them with fresh oil, drained it again. Seals look good, but one of these was perished, so I've replaced both of those and put it all back in. So, and I then got the correct weight of oil. This is 10W on these. It's soft, it's going to be soft, it always was soft. Check the brakes, clean the brakes out, and really she's ready to go again. And that again is ready for a testing. The weather's turned cold, so I can't be asked to go out in the freezing cold. But did a couple of little sort of tidy up jobs, cleaned the wheel, yeah, the stuff you do when you take things apart. I would have liked to have done some paintwork on that headstock, but I keep calling it headstock, top yoke. But I sort of pulled myself back from getting involved in that, because that involves, well, I didn't take it out obviously, and again it looks like this has been out and done, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's I could probably do it with a bit of, well, with a lot of fiddling. You could probably do something with that. It's a piece of plastic. It looks like it's been painted before. You could probably just put a brush in there. It's not a dream machine. It's a usable running motorcycle, and it's had a few bits brushed in, I can see on it anyway, so I'm not losing sleep over that. But hopefully, forks done. Say, I wouldn't have even bothered going that far with this, but for the fact that one of these was rotted, perished. So, new set of those just for the love of it. They're only cheap from David Silver Spares, and that was it. So I've spent a good deal of time faffing about with a pair of them, and you know, you get sort of you get stuck into sort of maintenance, touching things, and the moment you touch something it grows, and then you get sort of little things like, why is this here, that should be there. I've actually changed. This little clip here was on the other side, but didn't have any cable that I could see that would be, you know, there's nothing to go there. So it's around here. Well, that's dark in there, but there was nothing there for it to clip to nothing there for it to do. So with a bit of common sense, I thought, well, the front brake cable is just crying out for it. It's supposed to have a rubber thing there, which has long perished and disappeared into the ether. So that's obviously been replaced. Been replaced by a little clip which always looks dreadful. I don't like the way these look, but I just can't really do much about it. Tuck it out. Another little job was to tuck in some wiring, so I put a cable clip in there, because this, although it didn't look like it was touching, that's a sharp edge there, so if it did rub on it, it was a possibility of causing problems. Just little things you do. So I'll be pleased when the sun comes to get her out. That's where, oh, I think originally when I got it, this was just hanging in the breeze, and it obviously rubbed there. The brake cabling routing is a little bit, and I'm not quite, I've looked at different ways of routing that cable on the front brake, and I can't see any better way than that. I'm wondering whether it would have gone through the handlebar fixing maybe, but that wouldn't work. It doesn't work going over the other side, there's not enough cable. So that's now where it is. That's where I've put it, and that's where it is. Brake works fine. It's got plenty of well, these brakes say they work fine. I sometimes look and think, flipping out, that could do with some more adjustment, but it's nearly out on that adjustment there, and that is a fixed spline obviously on the bottom. It's not a spline, it's a fixed, I'm trying to think what it is, like a flat-sided thing, but that's pretty good brake. I'm pleased with that. So nothing collides with anything. So we'll get the battery on once we've got some distilled water from our friends at Halfords, and that'll be ready. So this one, the Honda, that's ready to roll now. I put these grip puppers on, which a lot of people don't like because they're big on your hands, but there's some really poor grips on that, and they're not the nicest feel, but with those grip puppers on, it feels a lot better. I had a bit of a problem with a lot of slack on that, so I've taken the slack out of that. Just checking I've done it back up again. You take these things apart, you'll be paranoid now for the next foreseeable future until you forget about it, that you've done everything up tight. But most of the headlamp on this, you don't move this, the forks just come out nice and easy, so it's not the end of the world. So that's that. She's ready to test, really. Let's look at the handlebars. If I put the handlebars in too far this way, too far that way, but they look about right. Till I ride it, I won't know for sure. So that's it for now.